You came in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Looking at this now, I'm like, why did we even try?
And there I am. Like sticking my head out and the camera up. And I know you watched this clip.
I watch it every morning.
So you should. Welcome to this episode of Venari TV's podcast. Today we're talking about an old trip and an old movie we made. And today I'm really excited because I got to pick the movie and the trip we're going to talk about. We actually had to do 3 trips to complete this title. And I guess you already know what title we're talking about.
I have an idea, yeah.
It is the very elusive Irish Sika deer.
Yeah.
And we had to do 3 trips.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we started out going to Ireland with Emil.
Yes.
As
the first trip was
photographer.
me, yeah.
The first trip with Norman Mulvaney from Irish Safaris. And it was planned perfectly, I think.
Yeah, we knew in like a long time in advance we're going on the trip. Sometimes it's very like urgent. Suddenly we have to go on a trip.
Oh, yeah.
This one we knew months ahead.
Yes. Everything was planned. It was meant to be close to the rod. And everything was planned really well.
Yeah.
Up until that Wendy and I decided to go for a casual game of badminton.
As you do.
Yes, you do, on a Wednesday night in Scotland. And I think this is 2 weeks or something before we were meant to go to Ireland.
Yeah.
And I snapped my Achilles tendon, which is a...
Playing badminton. Let's just reiterate that.
Playing badminton,
While
yeah.
playing badminton.
Yeah.
Against your wife.
Against my wife. I won.
Yeah.
In the broader perspective, you could say that she won. So a snapped Achilles is not the best lead up to a hunt in the Irish hills after Sika. Sika are tricky enough to hunt in its own right. Being on crutches and with a big air boot did not help.
No, you called me and said slight problem.
Just
Yeah, and you convinced me that this could be a great movie.
It'll be fine.
That's just an extra layer to the movie.
Yes.
And and I said yes, and I don't think I realized how because you said you were on crutches and you had the thing on your leg, and I was like, that'll be fine. I don't think I realized until you picked me up because you guys were living in Scotland at the time.
Yeah.
So we met up in the airport in Dublin, and you came on. You came in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Wendy and I walked into the airport to pick you up, and there was a wheelchair. It was like, yep, we're taking
2
that.
cups of coffee and hey, welcome, and then in a wheelchair. And I thought this is going to be different.
Yeah.
And we drove to, what was the name of the place? I can't remember. Yeah.
It was close to the Wicklow Mountains.
Yes,
And the
that's
Wicklow
true.
Mountains are legendary for the Sika population.
Exactly.
So, and just to cut a very long story very short, we struggled. And if you wouldn't mind playing the first clip I brought along, this is to showcase how much we struggled stalking Sika on crutches. Yeah. So this is the max speed when you're stalking on crutches with an air boot.
Yeah.
And I also called Norman, of course, and said, we have an issue with my Achilles. And he was like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I have lots of high seats and I know how the Sika move. And again, I just want to say, there is a reason why we call the Sika the ghost of the forest, because it is super elusive.
Yeah.
And it is clever.
Did we even see one?
We saw some.
I can't remember.
Not a lot. And I think the biggest problem was that it just took forever to get up the mountains and get to the valleys where the Sika was out in the
maybe
early
a bit
morning.
noisy.
And a bit noisy, and it was just, and in Ireland, as in many places in the hills, there's lots of hedgerows and gates. So if you wouldn't mind playing the next clip, which is just to double express.
Looking at this now, I'm like, why did we even try?
Yeah, we should have just maybe stayed at home, but it was not easy.
Looks like Norman is thinking that as well. He looks at the camera like.
And Norman is such a passionate hunter, and he was so frustrated. Every day I was trying to keep up the mood and the positivity, and I could just tell Norman was like, that whole week it was a disaster.
Yeah.
We had lots of fun. We saw lots of beautiful nature, but we didn't shoot anything.
No, it was a lot of high seats.
Yeah.
And I, as far as I remember, the weather was quite nice until the last day.
It was actually not bad. Yeah, the last day it was raining a lot.
Yeah, and Irish rain is different.
Yeah.
Proper rain.
Proper rain, yeah. But it was nice enough up until that point.
Yeah.
We saw this was my first time in Ireland. It was lovely. Norman was lovely. It was great, and we got to see the local culture through the pubs.
Yep.
And we drank not just Guinness. We also had other kinds of local lager. But it was it was great.
And we went to the smallest pub in Ireland, I think.
I think so too. Yeah.
Dying Cow or something.
Yeah, that's
lovely.
exactly what it's called. Yeah, I didn't remember that. But I think maybe 15 people could fit in that place.
Yeah.
When you're sitting shoulder to shoulder, it was lovely, and they sang songs. It was almost like a caricature on Irish culture when we were there. I think did they set this up because they all sang songs, like someone just bursted into songs.
Yeah. And the guitar kind of went around.
Yeah,
and anyone
exactly.
could pick it up. It was a beautiful trip, hunting wise.
No animals.
But Norman is a dedicated guy, so right away he was like, "Jacob, you're coming back. We need to get you on a Sika." So I think it was in December. I remember Christmas lights.
Yeah.
I was out of my
Just got out of your airport.
Just got out of it, still limping, no crutches, and then Goop and I went back. There was no rut. We hunted hard for, I think, a small week.
Yeah.
And on the last day, I remember we spent the morning, and Norman, we were all very frustrated, and he was like, let's just go for a wander through the forest. We didn't expect them to be out. We expected them to have gone to bed already.
It was raining all morning or something like it was like proper not nice weather.
Next clip, please. This is where something exciting finally happens. This is where we finally get on a Sika. And the stress, it was so intense. And you can see and feel that Norman also was like, it's happening. And there was two Sikas, two hinds. And it finally turns perfect, and we shoot it, and the release of emotions was quite intense, and you could tell that finally Norman was so happy that we shot a Sika. My very first Sika, not a trophy animal, a beautiful situation, a good shot, and everything was good. And I think I will remember that day forever. Even, it's just a hind, not just, but it's a hind. But it was my first Sika, and I was so happy. And again, and with you, and we again worked really hard for this animal.
I remember we couldn't find it.
Oh yeah,
we were looking at the camera. The shot was perfect. The animal made the perfect movement. We were like, she's gone. It was 80 meters, 100 meters. We walked down there, see the blood. We just couldn't find the animal. And we were walking around, and Norman was talking about, should I bring my dog?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
But she's not far away. She needs to be somewhere right here. And was it you were jumping over a creek or something?
So I've always been taught to start out the blood tracking at the point where the animal was hit. And I think we just kind of assumed it would be dead just there. So I went back, and jumping back over that creek, I noticed it was lying in the creek. So it jumped up into the air and made it maybe 2 meters. And we thought it would have, because Sika are tough. They run after they get shot, even with perfect shots. So it was in the creek. And again, Norman was stressing in it. And I could just tell, like, we finally shot one and now it's gone. But we found it, we recovered it. And yeah, it was a very, very nice end to another struggling hunting situation. But obviously, I still had a craving for a nice Sika trophy. So a few years later, we get in touch with the legend John Sika Fenton. And it's actually our good friend Klaus who produces the awesome Viperflex shooting sticks. And he sets up this trip that we are going to John. And we're going to hunt Sika. And it is in... When was it?
That was in December last year.
That was also December.
Yeah.
So a little bit of snow, beautiful terrain. It was on the other side of the Wicklow Mountains. And we get to hunt with John. And I'm just telling you immediately, you might not know, but Mr. Fenton has this nickname, Mr. Sika Fenton. And I remember as a kid reading about John. And to me, yeah, it's been like a legend. And to be able to go hunting with him was special just to begin with. And we go, and I actually, the next clip, please.
But it was not the easiest start on our trip, because we get to Dublin, we pick up our rental car.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And we had to drive 3 hours.
Yeah, not long.
Nah. But apparently they don't do winter tires in Ireland as we do in Denmark.
It's not a thing.
Apparently not. And apparently not that often that it actually snows in Ireland.
No.
But we get there and everything is covered in snow. And we end up in this little car with no winter tires. And Klaus is like, yeah, I know where we're going. I'm just going to put in on the GPS and we'll follow the GPS. Perfect. And then all of a sudden we take a ride and we just start going up. The roads get smaller and smaller and more ice, more and more. I was like, we're not able to get there.
Nope.
And all of a sudden we're just spinning backwards down these small Irish roads, and there's rock,
the hedgerows on each side, and yeah.
What a start. Now we're back in Ireland.
I remember calling the rental business saying, we need a new car, we need winter tires. And the lady is like, dear sir, that's not a thing in Ireland. We don't have it. You can go to an auto shop and buy some, but it's not a thing because it snows maybe 2 days for every 10th year. So it was a tricky start, but we got there. And the next clip, please, is so Mr. Fenton is
what a beautiful morning.
Is such a character.
My reputation is still in place.
I think we are.
You said down there that I wouldn't be able to get you.
Yes. And the plan worked, but as with all plans, something happens, then you change. But I think it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, but you wanted to go down there and see that.
No. I said that was an option. and he has such a reputation, and he can come across a little bit serious and maybe strict. But he's so warm, and his humor is actually very Danish. There's lots of sarcasm and like little pointy remarks, and we just had so much fun together. Beautiful weather, beautiful scenery, and lots of Sika.
I love the hat.
Yeah.
It's great.
But when we travel around the world, we meet a lot of guides and different outfitters. But there was not a single time where I was doubting whatever John was saying, or his plans, or anything. You could just feel that he knew exactly what to do.
Yes.
And he was always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, saying, okay, if they're running that way, we're going that. And to me, it was like, why are we... Okay, I'll just follow you.
And that's actually interesting because very often a guide or an outfitter will tell you about the plan, and sometimes we look at each other and we're like, I would have done it different. But with him, even though you might think, why are we going that way when the deer is there? But you just instinctively knew that we're following John.
Don't question him.
No.
Because he knows what he's talking about.
And he's got a few decades of experience. So.
And is this his area?
Yeah, so he has contracts with the landowners.
Yeah.
And so there's so much Sika that you need to regulate the population. You need to shoot some because they're quite tough on the forests and the heather. So he has.
I think he mentioned, and I'm not quite.
I don't remember the number,
was it
but
between 600 and 700 Sikas per year.
Yeah.
He was involved shooting.
Yeah.
Either he shot them himself, or he
600 or 700.
He took clients.
Yeah.
Wow.
Each season.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's
and then you multiply that with 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he knows a thing or two about Sika. Which also leads me to a fun story that. So I start out with the rifle, and we shoot a few spikers and females, and then at one point. No, I think the next clip, actually, now I forget. I think the next clip, play the next clip, Emil. I think this is me walking up to my very first, my very first Sika stag.
Wow. How pretty is that?
I was so proud and I was so happy, and it was an old stag, and we spent a long time picking him out of a big herd of stags. And it was just this beautiful terrain with these big open grass fields, and I cannot wait for that stag to come home, and it's going in this studio somewhere. Maybe it's just going to be right on this table, because I'm so happy about that. I've been dreaming about an Irish Sika stag since I was a small boy. It's not a perfect 8-pointer, but a very, very nice old stag. So perfect situation.
Yeah, it looks nice.
We got up to that field, and there was what, I don't know, 20, 30 animals just standing on an open field.
Yes, all stags.
It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never, we saw hundreds of Sikas every day. It was literally Sika paradise. That was
Very stark contrast to
Yes.
the first trip.
Yes.
The first two trips.
yes,
But going back to earlier when you talked about the Sikas, they will run even though you hit them with a perfect shot. You hit him perfectly. He was standing broadside, and the whole herd just starts running.
yeah,
And I remember I was a bit behind you, so I could see more of the field than you could. And you were like, where is he? And I could see him just running, but he ran for 200 meters. And then he started drifting away from the rest of the Sikas who ran into the forest. But it was like, he should have just dropped on the spot.
but they are super tough. And we were shooting through this hedgerow, so I took the shot. I saw the bullet hit, and as I reloaded the gun, he was out of my sight because of a small bush. So I didn't see him run to the left where all the other animals were running away. So I was actually trying to pick him out because they ran 100, 150 meters and stopped. And I was trying to look at them to see if anyone was wounded. And then they started running again. And I was like, what is going on? And then John and you were like, it's just over there. I didn't even see him drop. So it was a very memorable evening. But then, so I got my stag. So I was like, okay, Goop, tomorrow you're shooting. And John brought us to this beautiful terrain. And we were getting up to this big group of Sika that hadn't actually seen us, which is quite rare because these guys are alert. And we get there, and you're getting ready, and John is putting out the rucksack, and you're getting on the rucksack.
We are on our stomachs in this ditch.
Crawling, and there's snow, and there's water, and all the Sika are there. And I'm the last one with the camera. I was like, well, but the camera is important. I need to look what's going on, and I need to film what's happening here.
Yeah.
So I just pop up my head above the backs of you and John, and I put up the camera, And then please, if you could play the next clip, which explains what happened then. I messed up. So I not only broke from cover, I also broke the skyline. And right away, the deer saw us. And they ran. So that was my fault. I'm sure I'm gonna... Yeah, no one's gonna forget that in a while. But
Yep.
yeah, not my finest moment. And as warm and charming and jokey with jokes John can be, he can also be really strict. And these animals, I remember they just one of them gave that warning whistle, and they all stood up and they just ran. And John turns around and he's like, he couldn't understand it because they were in perfect cover. So he looks around because something else must have happened. This is how well he knows the Sika. And there I am, like sticking my head out and the camera up, and he just looks at me and he's like, "You fucking idiot." And yeah, I apologize for that. It was not my finest moment.
The car ride back home was quiet.
Yeah, because John was really upset with me.
Yeah.
Were you upset with me?
I mean, it was a nice looking stag, but the whole situation about the stag I actually shot, to me, was just...
It made it up.
A million times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that was the next day, wasn't it?
Next morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think John was punishing, especially me, a little bit. So we were actually left on our own.
Yeah.
To go up this mountainside.
John's wife had a birthday or something.
Something, yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the excuse. I think mostly he was just fed up with this whole camera project.
Now he looked you in the eye and said, "And you'll be bringing the camera tomorrow."
Yes.
Okay? So he was like, because it was a perfect situation, and I think he was eager to let me shoot a stag as well.
Yes.
So he made sure that I was the one carrying the rifle the next day.
Yeah. And that leads us to something I know you've been very excited about.
I'm proud.
And excited.
A little bit.
Yeah. And there was a lot of pressure on us because the last thing John told us was like, so now you've got to prove that you learned something from the last few days.
Oof.
Yeah. And you were in charge. You were the gun. And we hike up the mountain, and as per usual, when you hunt John's area, there was Sika everywhere.
Yeah.
And now you get to tell the story.
It was we got into this hill. We went through a forest, as I remember it, and we get dropped in the bottom of this big. There was like two hills coming together like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Yeah, good luck, guys. You decide where to go." And we were like, "Okay." I remember we were looking at each other like, "Okay, yeah, that way, yeah, that way. Okay, let's go." And I don't know. We've been walking for a couple of 100 meters, and all of a sudden, my eyes just started to see animals instead of bushes, and it's like I need a couple of minutes to adjust. And okay, now we are hunting, and then there was just animals all over the hillsides. It was amazing, and there was one or two lonely trees on one of the hillsides, and I was like, let's go to the trees, find some cover, and have a look, because it looked like all the animals were moving in the same direction on top of the ridge. And it was a tough walk up there, I remember, because it was heather, snow, and you had no idea where you were going, if you went in knee deep or even to your waist or something like that. And we get up there, and as I remember, I'm actually aiming at a stag somewhere. And all of a sudden, the whole herd just start moving. And I don't know, 350 meters. And they just disappear over the ridge. And then we're like, okay, let's go back, have a nice Irish breakfast, and make a new plan for the afternoon. And I think I'm talking to the camera. I'm talking to
We're
you.
actually doing a little interview on what just happened.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, because I'm looking the other way. I'm not looking at the mountain anymore. I'm looking at Jacob talking to the camera. And I can just see Jacob's eyes going from the camera up to the hills again. I was like, oh, and he's like, animals is coming. Okay, reset. We might get a new chance here.
Yeah.
And a new herd comes in from our left, walking right. And there is, I don't know, 10 animals, something like that. Hinds, some young stags, and some of the young stags starts fighting. And it's quite exciting. But the rut was over, and I think they're just playing around, kind of like...
Just being young and stupid.
Yeah. And then I see this, what it looks like an older stag, bigger stag coming from the left. I whispered to Jacob, you got him and everything is fine? And he's like, yeah, I'm all set. They fight for, I don't know, a minute or something like that. And then he turns around.
Perfect broadside.
Yeah. 350, 60 meters, something like that. And we're on this hillside, and it's in the Viperflex, and I'm like, it's now or never. And I shoot him, and he drops perfectly.
Yeah.
And should we watch the clip and then hear what John Fenton said to you, or should we hear what John Fenton said to you and then watch the clip?
I've been thinking about it, and I know you watched this clip.
I watch it every morning.
So you should, because I think we should put John's words as an intro to this clip. So if we remember that John has been doing this professionally for more than 30 years, he never had a client not shoot a Sika. He shoots 700, 800, 900 Sikas a year, or he's right there with a client who shoot. It's a lot of Sikas over the last 30-some years. Not only was Goob super cocky the whole flipping morning because of what happened, but then we sit in the pub for breakfast and we show the footage to Mr. John, and his immediate reaction was, I've never seen something like that before. That is the best shot he ever witnessed on a Sika, which is
That's
big.
a good intro.
It's big praise from a guy like him, and let's watch it. I love that. Him.
Han ligger der.
And that last jump is the last thing I see. I don't actually think I see him drop because I'm looking at the camera. But that jump up into the air, I was like, oh, that was a little bit worrying to me.
Yeah.
But let's keep that for a second, because I just want to... The next clip is something that's... This is quite meaningful to me, because this shows the perfect after reaction to a shot. And this is where you can tell if you're a real hunter, in my perspective, because seeing you there and you're so emotional, and there's so much fire in your eyes, and that was a beautiful moment to me.
And then we had 350 meters walking.
It was a long walk.
And it was an extreme long walk, not knowing what
to expect
to expect when we got up there.
I'd like to suggest that from now on we only shoot animals that are on the same level as us, because that's always what you forget, is there's a long climb.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
He couldn't it was to be fair, it was downhill, and you dragged it yourself, so it was okay.
Have you got it at home?
Not yet. I'm
Not
waiting
yet?
for it as well. So that's when Jacob said he's going to put his stack there. I'm pretty sure I'm going to put mine a little closer to the camera.
Exactly.
Now, we're still waiting for it. But that situation that morning, and with the whole story of you guys going to Ireland, my expectations were not that high. When you called me up and said, "Hey, we're going to Ireland again. Fancy coming?" Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay.
I've been dragged through it once before. Why not once more? But I've never seen the amount of animals in a hunting area like that.
And I think something we also, you've touched on it previously, this thing of it's gotten to a point for me now that I don't actually have to be the one taking the shot.
No.
I remember this situation as well, being behind the camera, as I think I would have had it been me who took that shot.
Yeah.
And I love it that we share these
And
things
also the
together.
fact that it was you and I in a different country, hunting on our own. We have to prove ourselves. I felt the pressure. And
Me too.
There was some weight coming off our shoulders walking up there, seeing him stone dead.
Yep.
And
We have to go back.
I'm ready.
Maybe we should bring Emil so he gets to see what a Sika actually looks like.
Yeah. No injuries this time.
No.
I miss you, John. Can we come back?
Yes, John, we're coming back.
I said earlier, I'm not sure.
And that's it for now. Next time we're gonna pick a different movie and a different story, and we're super excited if you want to join us for that talk. In the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please write an email to podcast@venaritv.com. Thank you for watching.